The recording. Okay, looks like it is recording now.
Yes.
Okay. So, hello and welcome to our workshop on school food waste and recovery. And the theme of this symposium is We Are Nature. And if we are nature, we are also food, because most of our food comes from nature. And we're not only what we eat, we are what we don't eat. So today we're going to talk about how we can recycle and recover food that we don't eat. And we're going to focus on school food. And we want to emphasize that this issue of food waste is bigger than the individual. It's built into our food systems, and that's where we need to make change. Okay, so now I'm going to ask our presenters to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Cassidy.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Thanks everyone for being here. My name is Cassidy. I'm the Farm to School Program Manager with Nutrition Services in Upland Unified. And then I'm here representing Nutrition Services, which is led by our director, Ksenia Glenn. And Upland is in Southern California, San Bernardino County.
And
Hey
Denise?
everyone. Hey, thanks. My name is Denise. I am a Randall Lewis Fellow and a Masters of Urban and Regional Planning student at Cal Poly Pomona. And I will hand it over to Debbie.
Yeah, and I'm Debbie Schnoor. I'm the Environmental Education Coordinator of University of California Cooperative Extension of San Bernardino County, and I had the privilege of working with Upland USD last year on several waste audits.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, we're really excited to work with Debbie still today and continue our partnership with UC ANR and be here for the symposium. So I'll just give a little background on Upland Unified Farm to School so you can get some ideas of where we're coming from as a district as we share some of our progress towards SB 1383 compliance within our district. So, and I'm noted on Jennifer's note that will be done at 11:35. So UUSD Farm to School provides extended learning to our students, farm to cafeteria and garden to cafeteria opportunities, as well as a big focus on sustainability in our gardens, classrooms, and the kitchens. Currently, last year we taught about 350 students in Garden Club. This year we're set to expand that to about 1,000 students in Garden Club. So that's a 10th of our school district. We have 14 school gardens and an accompanying garden program in all of our schools. And so it's really important for us to get out there and teach the kids about the environment, and school food and school food waste falls into that really well. I will pass it over to Debbie to share a little bit about the organization she's with. Thank you.
So UC Cooperative Extension in San Bernardino County has an environmental education program, and our mission is to educate the public about environmental topics by sharing research from University of California and other trusted sources. We give presentations and workshops on a wide variety of topics, and we emphasize composting, sustainable landscaping, and resource conservation, especially conserving water. And UCCE also has some other programs that you may be familiar with: FNEP, the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program, 4-H, Master Gardeners and Master Food Preservers. And UCCE also has academic advisors in areas such as horticulture, agriculture, and natural resources. So before we continue, let's take a moment to share some information about ourselves. And so we'd like you to answer this question. Where are you most interested in food waste and edible food recovery? And I'm going to be running a poll, and just pick the answer that best applies to you. So either home, school, community, business or organization, or other. And if it's other, type it in the chat. So I'm going to start the poll now. All right, can everybody see the poll?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so give you guys a minute or so to respond. We've got one community.
As co-hosts, we cannot vote, but I am
Yeah.
voting for school.
And I'm voting for community.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a light poll out there.
Yeah, that's true, but it's fun. It's fun to run polls.
Yeah.
So we have
There's a lot.
homes. Go ahead.
Oh, there's a lot more to do in Zoom than I thought there was.
So we have homeschool and community. So, and we'll have a chance to talk more about that later in our discussion. Okay, I'm going to share the results. Can you guys see that? So we've got, of the people who can answer, we've got a home and community. So, all right. That was fun. Got to run a poll.
Thank you, Debbie, for organizing that.
All right,
so just
go ahead.
a quick workshop outline, and all of these things that we talk about today are going to really talk about how homeschool and community intersect within SB 1383. It's definitely not something that's done in a silo. It's going to affect all of us in different ways. So we're going to talk about some Senate Bill 1383 background. We're going to talk about some facts about food waste in the US and some school food waste information. We're going to talk about food systems and what happens after you throw out your trash. And then we are going to talk about some of our school waste audits and some of the results and benefits and that process from those. And then we'll jump into a little bit about what Upland Unified's doing and what other school districts can do to start on the compliance process. And just a disclaimer, we are in no way like close to compliance for SB 1383, but through some really key players, we've been able to start a little bit of a process on that. And so I really want to introduce Denise, who's again from Cal Poly Pomona, Randall Lewis Fellowship, and she has been helping us work on a SB 1383 compliance plan. And I'll let her share a little bit about herself and her background, but I'm really excited to introduce Denise. Thank you.
Hi, Cassidy. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here. Thank you for that introduction. So yeah, I wanted to start off with talking about the SB 1383. So when we're talking about organic waste for the purposes of SB 1383, we're talking about materials such as green waste, wood, food, and also fibers and textiles such as paper, cardboard, and clothes. So just we're gonna get a little bit data heavy here, but I'll add some context as well. So in 2018, organic waste comprises over a third of the state's total waste stream. Of this organic waste stream, 2.9% was potentially donatable foods like vegetables, meat, dairy, cooked foods, and packaged non-perishable foods, whereas 12% were non-donatable or inedible. So just to illustrate this a little bit more, that's about 1.1 million tons of edible, donatable food, which means that in 1 year, California alone threw an equivalent of 5,334 blue whales, the largest mammal on planet Earth. Think about that, the mass and scale of food that could go to feeding hungry people instead of the landfill. And I'm a sucker for this type of like imagery, so you might see more of that later on in the presentation. In California, 1 in 5 children go hungry every night. So recovering 1 ton of edible food could provide more than 1,600 meals to hungry people. So redirecting perfectly edible food that is currently being disposed to feed those in need can really help to alleviate this hunger gap. And recovering edible food can also help conserve natural resources too. Every 2.5 tons of food rescued is equivalent to taking 1 car off the road per year. Next slide, please. So in light of the requirements, California aims to recover 20% of currently disposed edible food for human consumption. This means providing internal containers for collection, whether they're green, blue, gray, or labeled containers, usually provided by the collection agency. subscribing to an organic waste collection service or a self-haul organic waste to a recovery facility, meaning you're just taking it to that facility yourself, periodic inspections, educating internal staff, and providing information to staff and students on prevention methods. This regulation also mandates that school districts recover the maximum amount of edible food that's otherwise landfilled, keep records for future inspections, and maintain a list of food recovery organizations, so like food banks and food pantries, with a written contract, a record of service, and types of food collected, the frequency, the quantity measured, and the pounds recovered. So compliance evaluations, they're usually done by CalRecycle's enforcement branch, and will start on January 1st, 2024, which is the enforceable date. So those are just the requirements. We'll get into a lot of the fun and gritty stuff in a moment. So I will pass it on to Debbie, who will talk about food waste in the US and food waste data.
Thanks, Denise. Yeah, let's look at the big picture of food waste in the US, and then we'll narrow down to school food waste. So over 1/3 of the food produced each year in the US is never eaten, and that's over 133 billion pounds. And that's a staggering amount. And waste can occur anywhere along the supply chain, from farming to distribution and processing to retail to consumption. And the most common material that goes in the landfill or into an incinerator is food waste. And nationwide, that's about 20% of the collected municipal waste, which is a little bit higher than what Denise showed for California. So to address this problem, in 2015, the USDA and the EPA got together to set a goal to cut food waste by 50% by 2030, and that's only 7 years from now. But we know by reducing food waste, and recovering edible food, we can feed more people, conserve resources, and address climate change. And the upside down triangle you see on the right, the food recovery hierarchy, prioritizes the actions that individuals and organizations can take to prevent wasted food and also direct it where it's most needed. So the levels at the top are the most efficient. They provide the most benefits for environment, society, and the economy. Source reduction simply means not producing food that won't be used, and that's, again, the most effective. Next is feeding hungry people by recovering edible food that would normally be thrown away and directing that to food banks, soup kitchens, shelters, etc. So there's less data on school food waste, but the World Wildlife Foundation did a study of 46 schools across the country in 2019, and they found that on average, each school produced about 39 pounds of food waste and 29 cartons of milk waste per student per year. And that doesn't really sound like a lot, but if you extrapolate that to the national level, that would be about 1 billion pounds of food waste and 40 million gallons of milk waste. And in addition to being a waste of resources, that's also a lost opportunity to feed our children. And I'll turn it back to Denise.
Awesome, thanks, Debbie. So one of the ways to increase that edible food recovery and food waste recycling is to first identify what the challenges are, whether it's disproportionately high food recovery costs, liability concerns, negative public perceptions, and overlapping policy. A lot of it can occur in how the system works itself. So here's this flow chart I created. I created as part of my master's program requirements. I've chosen to do a project, which is a culminating experience research project. And for my project with the school district, I've created this flow chart to show a snapshot of the food management system in the context of the school district. So generally, there are 3 hierarchy levels, which is the policymakers in the blue rectangle. These are organizations like Cal Recycle, the county and the city, the school district in the orangish circle there, like nutrition services, maintenance, and the central kitchens, and the third parties, which are in the hexagons, like waste haulers, food banks, and animal feed processing plants, compost facilities, you name it. So although some of the literature exists regarding food recovery systems, little is actually known about its application and long-term effects. So food waste issues and logistic barriers, they're unique for every organization, and must be evaluated on the specific needs and resources available in that region. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the schools. So the goal of the study is to interview management in San Bernardino region throughout these levels, create themes, and triangulate the results with waste audit data to identify these hotspots from multiple perspectives. And this method has been modeled after an academic journal that's been peer reviewed and adds to that really big research gap. Ideally, the study provides a comprehensive look into how the hierarchy levels influence the food management system and how parts of the system can be aligned equitably and efficiently. And so my sample size came out to about 12 interviewees to achieve data saturation. Next slide, please. So, and this is why waste audits are crucial. First off, waste audits help us understand the scale of the problem. It also provides a better understanding of the drivers of waste, identifying these hotspots and other socioeconomic factors. Food waste is also context specific. So I'm talking about culture, tradition, societal norms, or even just logistics in management. So understanding these factors can effectively reduce waste. Third, engaging the community. This is relevant to everyone because it really takes a village to redirect food to hungry people and conserve our natural resources. From a business perspective, it also helps save money. Every $1 invested in training staff and improving facilities means $14 were saved. Food audits also increase the awareness of the impacts of food waste. And did you know that throwing away food at the consumer level is more resource intensive? Consumer level being us eating at home or at restaurants, because all the resources invested up to this point, including producing, processing, storing, packaging, and cooking the food, will be wasted. And lastly, waste audits are important for measuring how much progress we're making over time. All in all, you can't manage what you can't measure. So it's important to continually measure and monitor, which is what these waste audits do. Next slide, please. So here's the waste audit process. It's pretty straightforward and there's a lot of resources out there for how to run one. But essentially it starts with prepping such as coordinating with your school's nutrition services department, your cafeteria, your custodial staff, gathering your team members, observing meal times to create a plan, forming an audit sheet based on the observed waste, and gathering supplies. On the day of, we set up the stations, collect the waste, sort them, weigh them, and characterize them based on the audit sheet we've created. And then afterwards, we analyze the data, create a report to summarize the data, and identify these hotspots that will hopefully inform nutrition services on implementation strategies. So now I'm going to pass it on to Debbie, who will talk about Uplands High School's waste audit process and results.
Yeah, so we're going to show a couple of different examples of waste audits that were performed in the Upland School District. And the first one was a lunch waste audit at Upland High School. And this audit was led by the students in the Grow Club, and Grow stands for Gardening, Recycling, Organizing. And they recognized that there was an issue with food waste on the campus. So Grow and Farm to School program collaborated with Community Composting for Green Spaces to plan and implement the audit. And at UHS, all grades from 9 to 12, that's over 3,000 students, eat lunch at the same time in a rather large area on the campus, mostly outside. And so to avoid influencing student behavior, we didn't make any changes to the meal service or trash disposal by the students. The only change we made was to fit the trash cans with purple liners. You can see those in the second photo down just before the lunch period. And there were about 90 trash cans in the area that students ate. After lunch, we removed the liners and transported the waste to a central staging area where it was sorted into categories, counted, and weighed. And we found that in one lunch service on one day, there was nearly 350 pounds of waste created. And if you look at an entire year, that would amount to over 62,000 pounds of waste. And the interesting thing was almost 70% of that was compostable. So that was waste that we could save from the landfill. And food made up most of the weight, but paper and plastic contribute a significant amount of volume.
So in a elementary school sense, we conducted 2 waste audits at 2 different elementary schools. During the waste audit, we collected the food, sorted them into bins based on general categories like unopened whole food or fruit, partially eaten or opened food or fruit, and other non-food items like Debbie describes, like plastic or cardboard or aluminum, whatnot. So in Model 1, as you can see from the top, one typical breakfast produced 34.2 pounds of total waste, about 85% of which was food. For this model, we had students drop off their plate waste at a table during the mealtime. As they finished their meal, students also poured their leftover milk directly into the bin, and then the plate waste was sorted into their bins by the volunteers. In Model 2, as you can see in the bottom, it produced 79.3 pounds of total waste, about 76% of which was food. This model, we lined all the cafeteria bins with purple plastic liners to eliminate any influence on student behavior, and sorted them at a separate area during and after the mealtime. So from these waste audits, we saw that a majority were partially eaten of the whole uneaten foods. Whole fruits were actually the most prevalent, unfortunately. Over an entire school year, these 2 schools alone can produce around 20,430 pounds of food, which is equivalent to the weight of about 10 black rhinos. So I'm going to pass it back to Cassidy, who will talk about K through 12 education.
Thank you to Denise and Debbie for all of their hard work on the waste audits. I'm just going to really briefly check on this or touch on this because I know we want to get back to the main room by around 11:35, but and I want to get to talking about what you can do in your cafeteria. But essentially, the way that we have been, so a big part of SB 1383 compliance is going to be educating our students and educating our community. So in our gardens, we try to introduce the concepts of nutrient cycling, composting, soil building, nutrition and wellness in our classrooms very similarly. And then in our cafeterias, we are educating the students on the waste audits, making local farmer connections, focusing on food recovery, and then also focusing on our waste reduction. And what we found is that if we introduce some of these concepts like nutrient cycling, for example, or composting or soil building, we can teach the students that outside of the food recovery goal, the compostable items that we're throwing away we're missing out on being able to build our soil and make compost with that as well. So just trying to feed in education wherever we can with the students. Then of course, students go home and they teach their families. And so we're trying to really connect with our community of Upland as well, because everyone's having to do this at home as well. So this isn't just a school process. Next slide, please. So how have we been, how have the waste audits informed nutrition services so far? So our first waste audit, like Debbie mentioned, was last March at the Upland High School. And although it was student-led and a student came up with that idea, Debbie really did a fantastic job organizing that. And she's a really good resource if you want to do a waste audit at your own site. And then Denise, she taught Denise how to do a waste audit. Now Denise has been doing them really well at our site. So, but really I want you guys to know how this informed nutrition services. So first, we looked at the idea that if we're looking at the hierarchy of food waste recovery, or food recovery rather, the first is the source reduction. So we are the source in our school district. Nutrition services is a source of food production. So what we're doing is looking at what are students not eating, what do students like, what do students not like. And we're going into a recipe development and menu item phase in terms of making sure that we are developing new recipes that students like. And we are adding new menu items regularly, especially at the elementary school. So every month we're adding about 10 to 15% of new items so students don't get bored of the items that are being served. And then recipe development, we're trying to get back into scratch cooking, and we're trying to really increase our scratch cooking. We are doing share carts, or we're going to roll out share carts this year. It's been a little hard coming out of COVID, but we're working on a protocol to roll out share carts and connect with a food recovery organization. And then of course, the waste audits have really informed us as to how much packaging we had coming out of our cafeterias. So coming out of COVID, everything was individually wrapped. And so what we're working on now is biodegradable packaging, and then bulk condiments and bulk beverages. So that's some of our goals for the next year, as well as biodegradable cutlery, reusable cutlery. So looking at washing services, and just overall better purchasing, bulk items, less packaging, and then cafeteria education. So really educating our students about why we're doing this and why it's important. And through that, we are able to connect our students with organic farms and garden fresh produce, so that the students are out in the garden, they're growing produce, they see it on the salad bar, they're more likely to eat it. Or when we have farmers visit our schools, then students understand where that produce is coming from. So these are just a couple ways that these waste audits have really informed. It was shocking to us in nutrition services. It was shocking to our district of how much waste we're actually producing. So we've really just, again, tried to focus on better purchasing and less packaging to the best of our ability. And every week we are doing that a little bit differently. The last thing I'll mention is I'm getting really good with our menu integrity, meaning what's on the menu is what we are serving. So every month between 85 to 100% of our menus are fully, that is what we are serving that day. So that way students don't come in thinking they're going to get pizza or whatever, and then it's another item, and then maybe they throw that item out. So we're really trying to focus on at the source as well as the food recovery part. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassidy. Upland's doing a really fantastic job of trying to minimize food waste, and they've been doing this for years, even before it was mandated. So kudos to Upland for that. I think they're really on the cutting edge of what's being done on food waste. So originally, we were planning to do some breakout rooms here, but I don't think we're really going to need that. So I'm just going to stop the sharing here. And the question that we'd like to ask is, what experiences have you been having with food waste in your school and community? So if you'd like to share, please come off of mute and let us know. Or if you have particular issues that you're dealing with, or solutions that you've come up with. Also, we're sharing a resource sheet after the conference. And so if you have any resources that you know of that you would like to share with us that we can add to that resource sheet, also let us know. So I'll open it up to the floor now.
At my house, I feel like we go through a lot of food waste because
Mhm.
my dad or my parents like to cook a bunch of food and then it goes bad and we have to throw it away. But my mom kind of found a solution where she likes to compost, like she likes to put the food into back into the soil, but I feel like she's not doing it in the right way because I'm a volunteer at the RCRCD, so I recently learned how to compost. So I need to educate her on how to like properly compost things, not just like stuff everything in the ground and like hopefully it will break down in time.
Yeah,
But yeah,
step by
so
step.
working, yeah. So working at the RCRCD, it really helped me learn how to compost to reduce food waste. And it's also a great way to like use the soil as gardening too, because it can make like some really good fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Janet, do you have a green bin also that you can put your waste into at
Yeah,
home?
I recently heard that they're doing this thing where we could put food waste in the green bin now.
Mhm.
Um, but I haven't told my mom that, they're able to do that now. So maybe I should like let her know.
Yeah, depending on what you want to put in your compost pile versus what you want to send off to industrial composting, because they can definitely take more materials.
Mhm.
And yeah, I also want to add to that by saying that my apartment complex recently got a green bin, but we have huge dumpsters. So we have these two huge dumpsters, one for recycling, one for landfill. And then we have this tiny little green bin and half the things that go into it are not things that should be. And we really haven't gotten any education on how to
Mhm.
use it. And even as someone who's kind of educated on these things, sometimes I even wonder, but I live in the city of Rancho Cucamonga, and recently they offered free like countertop waste bins for food recycling to everybody in the city. So we were able to pick up that for free. So I know a lot of cities are starting to do that.
Yeah, in Covina, they just left us one, a countertop compost bin, and didn't say anything to anybody about what it was for. I live with my grandma, and the next day she had it outside and was just using it for weeding when she's like, "This is perfect for me to carry around, when I'm weeding." And I'm like, it is, and I'm sure that's what people are gonna use it for. And also it's kind of comical when you're living in a multi-generational household to get this little teeny countertop bin. So and Janet, I agree, we end up wasting quite a bit at home, but some of the things that I've personally tried to start doing is like I keep my vegetable scraps to make vegetable broth. Just kind of little things, but of course it takes time, and I think that that's going to be a big argument with this, but I would agree that there's been kind of a shocking lack of community education in some of these places where they just drop you off a countertop and everyone's like, wait, I'm supposed to put my food in here and let it get stinky all week, or I don't really understand. So I think that there needs to be quite a bit more education that goes out.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone else want to share? Jennifer, I know you've been working in the community. What are you seeing? You were talking in the chat about the food waste that you see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the biggest way that we interact with food waste, at least here in my work setting, is how, when we see it with the schools when they come out here. And like I wrote in the chat, we take some of the food from them, of course, when we can, so it doesn't go to waste. But it is interesting to see kind of the shift in packaging, especially. And it's interesting to learn that more packaging equals more waste. Because, when I think back at when I went to school, I don't remember everything being packaged so individually. I remember getting sometimes we had fresh food, fresh things given to us, even if it was, processed, but it was heated up day of, and given to us. It was more warm food. Now I'm seeing a lot more cold foods given out. And of course, you mentioned COVID. I'm sure that created a huge shift in kind of the paradigm and how we provide food for our students. But I mean, I think we are so educated enough. We're educated enough at this point that those systems, you know, these audits create a great kind of baseline as to what progress needs to be made. So it's really interesting learning about what is being done and what the next steps are to further this process so we can more sustainably, you know, so we can, you know, kind of narrow in this sustainability piece, because food waste is definitely a huge issue that I think a lot of people don't realize and aren't well educated enough. So definitely having more educational opportunities like you all to kind of learn about this is what I think the community needs at large. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm excited to have this up on our website. So for those that aren't here, or for those that did participate in this workshop, would like to kind of get back and hear or relearn the things that you shared, because I think that definitely it's worth taking the time to learn about this. So thank you so much for this wonderful workshop.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending. And just in case anyone wants to contact us after the symposium, here is our contact information. Thank you so much for attending, and we will get this presentation up on the Symposium website so others can watch it as well.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for organizing this, Debbie, for us to share. And just thank you all for being there. We look forward to hearing from you.